Chili here with siriustalesmoon, and this is how the Epstein dossiers, if we take it from the dossiers, yeah, I know, I need to check the NATO thingy. Wait a second. Because it's relevant to NATO as well. And basically, every country and also international organizations have the ministry that deals with cases of money laundering and funding terror. Jupiter, Jupiter, Jupiter. Oh, how many 18s? And this, and here is the, basically, um, this is basically the fiscal intelligence. When a person, for example, rapes a tenant, or when there is rape in hospitals, until that tenant is either making a mess in the house or unable to work or whatnot, what they get from that, first of all, people are paid to target individuals, which basically means they see that individual as a cash cow. They rape that individual to make of him a cash cow, and then they smear him in the units of now. That money is being laundered to fund terror. Now, how do they perpetuate terror? They rape and torture individuals. If they can't get out of the rape and torture of individual, if that individual can't get out of being targeted, then they become a war criminal. Now, the Ministry of Prohibiting Money Laundering and Funding Terror is working under the Ministry of Justitie. Okay, the judiciary. Ministry von Justitie. The judiciary ministry. And those are the people that are in charge now. They analyze financial information and deliver it to basically those that are the enforcement, which is the same intelligence that if infiltrated, as in the Epstein dossiers or the Trolodex, is behind the torture and the trafficking. Using hospitals funded by classified projects budget, using public housing, okay, the true dossiers that was probably managed by Saint Michel Nihul, because they brought him up to get that truth to not speak. And then these folks are supposed to protect the milk being the cats. Now they talk about identifying tracing the source of the money. You people can't follow the money. If you look at the company Eagle Investments, just one study case in, what is it, Celia? I wanted to, when Pluto was ingressing to Aquarius, I wanted to pitch them I said, in the age of air, people are gonna really want to see what their money is doing. And I said, let's take a person that's, I don't know, homeless, donate him 5 shekels. They say put 1 shekel to work and see what it does and have a live broadcast of what that shekel does or what the dollar does. They told me they have very big clients, public and private sector. Public and private sector. And I said, amazing. People are going to want that broadcasted live what their money is doing. Let's say what your 401k is doing. And I say we don't say who our clients are. And just seal it at that. And nothing to do. And every business has to report, but here is the thing. I didn't launch my business because when they try to traffic me, I realized they're not in it for a 42 years old aging woman with a mentality of a 6-year-old child. They're in it for trying to get me to launch a business and use and target the clients and then money launder on funding terror. And this is what people call false flags. Now this loophole is structurally doesn't cover corruption within the intelligence, corruption within the policing forces. It only takes one person in a county. I'm not saying the government is corrupt. I'm not saying the police is corrupt. I'm not saying the intelligence is corrupt. But it doesn't take many people when that one person deletes files, when that one person does things. And that person is enough for the people to be afraid to call the police, particularly for the inherent nature of the offenses that is already overwhelming and makes it impossible to give a coherent testimony. And then because they do the blame shifting, so they target the victim. A psychiatrist will tell you, oh, targeted individuals is bogus. That's the meat and Epstein dossiers. This is also why they make the drugs of the psychiatric impossible on people. Because they need them in crime. They can't have them healing. They can't have them trying to open a business. This is why people always experience that at the level up of the business. Because it's the junctures of corruption. Shout out to the Profit Door about 3 stages of business, of how much reporting does a business has to do. Before I was targeted on COVID. Now a lot of people have experienced that. It's kind of like you're doing your work. You do the shadow work, light work, shadow work, whatnot. You level up. The pinky toe is a little better, but the next one is already healing. And then it's the third one, and no problem. Then to the third one. Meanwhile, things change in life. Peter ring drop, but also in. And then there's another thing. So before, around COVID, there were a lot of business baby boomers. Everybody, think about it. If you open entrepreneurs, you're with me. If you open a business, and at first that business is the first level business, then you see a wave of people leveling up to LLC around you. Every business around me had the boom. Why? Because I'm that kind of person. You know you're up next. You know you're going to be putting some work and some rest there. You're going to cross. It's like, you say, why is that happening? Why is that not happening? And you see, this was a blessing in disguise. Because you didn't cooperate with the Epsteins. Now, the people that did, they might not know it. They might not know it until it's too late, because it would be the clients that were targeted, the employees that were targeted, and the entire business. And they could have been tortured. Now, when people put into a business, what is entrepreneurship? They take a risk. And then they try to keep people from having housing, keep people from having any conditions. And then they're imagining their serial this, they don't want to work, and your pensions go poof. What do you think? The traffic people are going to pay your pensions? The trafficking people is going to pay somebody's pensions. The people are going to be raped in your real estate, and you're going to have a yield. Now you're going to be hunted like a Nazi war criminal. Then a restaurant goes boom. Then a house goes boom. Then a hospital goes boom. Then a false flag. And the people that are now here is the thing. Here's the thing that with the current spirit of the times, because usually people would be called, oh, they're conspiracists. conspirators. Like, I don't know, dude. Like, I could have some sushi, drink coffee, but the tax office that I contacted repeated times over 3 years while being targeted and risk for my life and raped and using classified dark occult down fuckery is kind of preventing that. So I say, okay, when we're responsible civilian, and take a look at what blocks, what is between me and my cup of coffee. The Mormon church. But they're gonna say it's the Jews. Now here's the thing: if the Jews really abolished rape, then it wouldn't be the Jews. For those that thinking to convert to Islam because ask the Jews that came from North Africa how they were treated by Egypt one sudden day. They went through a Holocaust, nobody talks about it. They are called Eastern Jews when they are actually Western to Israel. Something happens, everybody blames the Moroccan. Now the Moroccan is angry. Of course the Moroccan is angry. But and of course the Moroccan might need to see whether he was trying to take it on the woman. But that's just the white people blaming the wife. Because the wife was promised a house here, a car there, a motel there, a this there, a that there, and everything is confiscated. No, there are young BIPOC people, have 90 estates. They care of the estates, manage the estates, and so on. Then they send the company that checks the tenants, sends the tenants after they're raped and. Now here's the thing: either they raped and tortured them, or if the person was considering psychedelics for trauma treatment, they raped and drugged them. Now, of course, if that person went through trauma, they actually need some sort of pain alleviation, and they do need those drugs. It's not. And then the families can't pay because they're also targeted individuals. Now, by the time they learn that they were targeted, it can already be a decade in, because if you have an entrepreneur mindset, you're not thinking, oh, somebody targets. For me, I think it was only when I heard from a man, they were probably in the Mason, that the men, they unite around harming the feminine. That I was like, that shit is, because it's so irrational. They try to divert the violence elsewhere because they usually harm each other. Now they still harm each other. Like Feynman said, it's kind of like they harm. To stay alive as children there, they need to show that they will betray everyone. And then somehow to try to have now when they catch for somebody of being a terrorist, they usually torture them. This is generating their next crime against humanity. And because they use weird tech and dark occult, they basically, that crime will already be by proxy, meaning that they would be programmer or something. This is why jail system generates criminals against humanity rather than prevents crime. Yeah. Now again, if, let's just say, if we went to Spain, looted the banks from silver so the people can buy food, I have no problem with laundering that. But if people went and raped infants to loss of sense of self so that they would commit crimes against humanity, which is more rape of infants, human trafficking and so on and so forth, and try to glorify that, to normalize that and so on and so. I'm getting it to a man normal. The unforgettable. Okay. That's not something that alchemically balances the gold and the silver and the food and. And this type of corruption is the corruption that I have a problem with. Because if we loot silver from the banks and the people can buy food, I've regulated the market. I just did that with piracy. I have no problem with that type of corruption. Now, to prevent the people from buying food, the state confiscates the banks. But when the corruption is generating, let's say, big bombings, mass shootings, and so on, by generating a culture that blames the victim, and at the same time generating people that can't turn to anywhere to get out of violence, it's that part of piracy, looting, that The minute you have to use eroticism or not, sexual boundary violation in your operation, you've generated a bubble that's going to pop on everybody involved. This is, why do drug traffickers get caught? Because drugs are also used to traffic. If you do drug trafficking and trafficking of people, then now during Gladio they became informants, but then the informants began to practice the white hat infiltration. Now, I was offered to be trained to be a white hat. Shout out to Light Asefa. And this is exactly what prevented me from saying yes, because I've got no problem with being a white hat. But if it is the torture without ability to get out of violence that creates the war crimes or the crimes against humanity, then that's the difference between a black hat and a white hat. For example, to the extent, let's say, I was tortured, right? To the extent that, because, let's say if I was homeless and I went during COVID, I see arrival, departures. I don't do anything. I just walk there. I don't know what the third party can do. But what if COVID was a military operation, which it was according to the Dutch government? Okay? This is why I couldn't accept a position of being a white hat. In order to do a job correctly, I need the conditions to be there. Okay. It's also why I did not become an English teacher at the public schools. Okay, because one-to-one or with one or two children, I could ask each child, what do you want to be when you grow up? Amazing. Let's begin to build there, but in English. I can't do it with 40 kids. I used the gamification techniques with the tips I got when I purchased the Charisma on Command by Charlie. And there was a guy, it was around a decade and a half ago, a guy calls me, said they want to learn English. Meet them in a public place. They said they're an English teacher and they come to me to learn how to teach. I said, I never taught a 40 students class, but let me try to help you. I combined Charisma on Command tips and gamification. And we developed the charisma based on the person that wouldn't beat the children, because he came to me and he said, I don't want to beat the children. So we built a charismatic persona around the teacher that wouldn't beat the children. Then he probably went and refined that and developed a method, combined it with gamification, began to do a contract with the kid that is flexible. Because first graders, third graders, if they can't listen because they need to move around, it's not something to do. It's not that they need a dose, but gamification can be used to incorporate the body in memorizing and language acquisition. He became the most favorite school teacher in the entire. If you see Bedouin children from the Negev in Israel speaking perfect English, it's probably thanks to the work that this person did. I could never do what he did. And none of it was my invention. Charlie on Command had his charisma tips. Gamification is gamification. I just combined these two. Basically, what I charged him for was my presence in the brainstorming and the emotional support of him during the process, which was 3 meetings. Now, in an agenda, when they want to confiscate homeschooling and put cameras in the rooms and beat the children and put children in jail for offenses that the adults that raped them committed by proxy, it was another thing that I was probably targeted for because of. Now, what they wanted the Bedouin children to do is beyond terrible, because they wanted them to do some things that would justify what would be a complete and total genocide of all the Negev Bedouin population. That said, it was like, oh, the crime in the Negev, the crime in the Negev. I said, if they're going to tend to that, they're going to say we did a genocide. And I said it before 7th of October. And by the way, during 7th of October, it was beyond terrifying, because the people there, the post-traumatic people that went to party there with the psychedelics and the Nova, they were picked up by trucks with Arabs, right? The people that came to save them, a lot of them were, because it was next to the Negev, a lot of them were Bedouin from the Negev. They took their truck and came to save. One time I was working in the garden. I saw an Arab person parking his car, and his car was a truck. And I said to him, listen, you're an Arab-looking person parking a truck that was used to kidnap people to torture. It's kind of creepy. Fortunately, now for him it's good, because for him it's basically me reflecting to him, because Israel was using profiling in its security. So the military training was Zumbur. The intelligence operations were human trafficking under the guise of honeypots. And the security system was profiling based. Even still, the women watchers were warning months before 7th of October. Let's just say, at the very least, the Epstein dossiers infiltrated the White Hats in Israel and in the United States, I dare say. NATO OTAN in the next episode. I haven't seen much. Let's see. NATO news. Now here is the drama between Israel and NATO. Israel increasingly casts Turkey as regional threat alongside Iran. Now, Turkey has extended that to flirting with BRICS. No. um, but I don't think the situation there in that currency looks better. NATO plays down Article 5 after Iranian missile incident. Well, that was March. Do we have actual news? What's happening? Okay, let's just check it through NATO news. Now, NATO's Turkey problem. Okay. Turkey to turn capital Ankara into fortress for NATO summit. Um, um, NATO support to Turkey. Well, NATO summit. Previous summit, I think, was in The Hague. When is the summit? I think it's the end of July usually. July 7, 8. Okay. I will look at that election when I'm having matcha in the airport. I need to record the 2027 forecast. So, lots of information. And again, to become a white hat, I need that the practice of torture or rape will cease, and particularly the practice of torture or rape without ability to get out, because that would be the conditions that I would be without my desiring to turning from white hat to black hat. Okay. And Even if I don't, if that is done, if that is done, then if basically they sees rape and they sees torture and so on and so forth, that tip is already a part of my legacy, not just my legacy, but the legacy of many, many minds that figured, let's say this is a direct from me with probably a lot of people. Some of them are probably seen as black hats, some of them are probably seen as white hats. Now let's think about black hats. Jeffrey Epstein, Michel Nihoul, maybe Marc Dutroux. So you understand what does torture do to people? The fact that I had good astrological aspects had a place to somehow that's the reason I can sit here talking to you about the fact that I was told to see certain things as training to be in a white hat. And I use that privilege to share this information with the limited access to media that I have. Now, if you want me to give a speech about that, I think I can. I'm gonna need sushi. Now here's the thing, I'm probably gonna need a safe place to stay, but I don't even know what would that look like. Because a safe place has to be compatible with agoraphobia and claustrophobia. I think this is a talk that every single person at every juncture of, whether it's Ministry for Preventing Money Laundering, whether it's whichever ranks of the military, whether it's the people that are thinking to found countries, Palestine. That thing that happened to Israel can happen to Palestine tomorrow. In fact, with Hamas, it already did. And the importance of declassifying classified technologies, because that's how they portray white hats and as black hats and black hats as white hats. And that's what preventing your work to yield. It causes work disabilities. Your therapy to be actually constructive. Your sense of meaning and purpose. Your faith in life. even your faith in humanity to decline. I didn't just look at, oh, have I lost the faith in humanity? I looked at what causes me to have faith in humanity and what erodes it. It's a privilege. But when I share that information, many more people can have access to that privilege. And that's my mission.